Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's GSC webinar, and we're going to be talking about the benefits of data management using SolidWorks PDM. So to start with, I want to just talk a little bit about what PDM Professional is. Okay, this is a data management system, and it's geared to SolidWorks users. It runs right inside of SolidWorks. It understands SolidWorks file structure. It understands links outside of the normal file structure, such as derived parts and things like that. And then we have also PDM Professional, which is what most companies are implementing these days. That also supports non-CAD tools and their subsequent files as well. So whether you're using maybe using AutoCAD or something like that, maybe using Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, you want to be able to do check-in and version control and manage and secure that data just alongside your SolidWorks CAD data. You can do that with PDM Professional quite easily. From a performance standpoint, what PDM does for you is it allows you to work locally but share globally, kind of in a nutshell. So instead of mounting a network drive and then constantly pulling hundreds or thousands of files across your network and then saving back across the wire all that time, what we're doing with SolidWorks PDM is we're going to check out. It actually copies things locally, and you work locally. When you check in your changes, only the changed files go update across the wire back to the server. And then likewise, you have colleagues that have their own copies of the same data set, and of course only one person can have write privilege to a certain file, a subassembly or assembly or part, but you can all work together and see who's using what in real time, which is really a game changer in terms of just collaboration and then also performance over a network. The core values of PDM Professional are that you're going to have a short productivity curve. It's not hard to learn how to use as an end user. It's going to have all kinds of security, searching, data replication through multiple sites, multiple flexible workflows if you want to have it with PDM Professional, data connectivity to other systems. Again, I'm going to be speaking more of PDM Professional on all these things, and then the scalability. So that's really what PDM Professional is all about. The fast learning curve, quick learning curve comes from the fact that we really make use of SolidWorks and Windows standard constructs in the operation of SolidWorks PDM Pro. So basically, if you're looking at the outside world, outside of SolidWorks, and you're coming in from Windows and you want to see what's in the vault, you just go into your regular Windows Explorer and just mouse over to that the virtual drive, which is actually your vault, and then boom, you have the information from PDM right there. It's all also integrated with your CAD software as well. Design reuse means you can find things easily and quickly, so it's easier to find things and reuse them than it is to recreate the same geometry or things you think you may have made a couple of years ago. People do that all the time now because it's not easy. It's not fast to search in plain old Windows. But imagine if you had essentially a Google for your files and you could find them within a second or two of just typing in some parameters. That really can change the game quite a bit. Because we have workflows that you control, that you specify with our help when we do the implementations, it means that PDM will work the way you want it to and not the other way around. And you can, in PDM Professional, do multiple workflows with all kinds of complexity. Workflows can call each other. There's really no end to the kind of controls you can have. And again, this makes it consistent and secure when routing documents, making approvals, all those things. The workflows you have now can all be mapped into PDM Pro. Because it's nearly infinitely scalable in terms of number of users, number of sites, SolidWorks PDM Professional is a great choice for companies that are growing or that want to start small and then scale up over time. Because you can implement the solution initially, just one site, one server, and a few clients, maybe in a certain project or something like that, and you can go ahead and start growing that out and going to different sites. It's all built right into the SolidWorks PDM Professional software. Data connectivity is something that more and more people are are wanting to automate beyond just CAD, just engineering, and they want to talk to, purchasing, they want to talk to the shop floor and things of that nature. And because we're based on SQL, we have a database that we can talk to almost anything. So whether you want to upload your BOM to your ERP system, or you want to export data out, a list of items to purchasing or whatever, there's all kinds of ways to do that. And not only can we do it on demand, we can also do it automatically as part of PDM Professional. The security in PDM usually often surprises and delights, quite frankly, IT administrators who are used to sort of being locked into the Windows security level and construct, where it's file-based. There's not a whole lot of granularity in terms of options. With PDM Professional, we have all kinds of different levels of security that we can have based on files, based on folders, based on users and groups of users, and based on the state of the file, which we'll talk to in a little while. And I mentioned before, replication. This is a big deal. More and more companies have to work, across teams that are distributed, geographically. So, being able to have local versions of the files, so when someone wants to go get something, it's not like a 15-minute wait just to download and open up a part file. That's what PDM Professional's replication is designed to alleviate. And everything's included. So this is not, when you get into PDM Professional, it's not like, well, you want replication that's a module, or you want to have workflows that's going to buy those separately. Everything's included right down to the API, as you typically would expect with a SOLIDWORKS application. Customers around the world are using PDM Professional. There's just a couple of them that we're involved with at GSC, and some other ones around the world. But there are PDM Professional is by far the most the fastest growing product. The most, I do, in terms of presentations, I do probably 4 presentations of PDM Professional for every 1 presentation of SOLIDWORKS CAD that I do these days, because again, there's just so many people that have SOLIDWORKS that want to improve their business on a process and management level. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on all that stuff. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit and introduced it, but what I'm really excited to do is to show you what it looks like, because it is the SOLIDWORKS of data management. So let me go ahead and approach it from a SOLIDWORKS user standpoint. So here I am as a SOLIDWORKS user, and one of the things that people, when they start first looking at PDM, they're concerned about, if I'm a user of SOLIDWORKS, am I going to have to relearn how to do everything? I already know how to save files and open files and things. I don't want to have to have all these extra hoops to jump through and things like that. Well, with PDM Professional, you don't have to do that at all. You don't have to worry about that. So here I am in regular SOLIDWORKS 2017, and I go and open up a file that I'm working on, a project I'm already doing. I can use any of the constructs I normally do. I like to pin things to my file pull down. So I'm working on this rescue spreader device. So let's go ahead and open it like I normally do. Now, if a project is managed inside of SOLIDWORKS PDM, then what's going to happen is when I do a regular open command, PDM will step in and say, well, do you want to just open that like read-only, or do you want to actually check it out so you have the write privilege back to the server to update changes that you're about to make? So you can choose what to do here. And not only does it know which file to do, in this case the upper assembly, the one I'm asking for, but it's also giving me the option to open up reference files that I have permission to do so. It will not let me check out files that are released already. I don't have checkout rights because these are released documents in my workflow. Released documents can be used. They can be referenced like parts, but they can't be checked out just that way. And again, it's smart enough to know that typically you don't want to do all that right away. You just want to do the top level, but you have the option. So bottom line is, I say open. It says you want to check it out. I say, yeah, good call. And that's usually all I have to do is just say, yes, check out. Thank you. So what it's doing here is it's going to actually download the files to my local machine, unless they're already locally, and then I'll just open them up local, so manage those copies. So I open this guy up, and I have the ability to say change this. It's a regular, like a SOLIDWORKS open. If I look over in the task pane here, I have a tab for SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional. And if you look at this tab here, we can see that we have some indicators of what's going on here. There's a pencil here because this thing is under editing, and I have an equal sign here. The equals is telling me the state of my local file set versus what's in the vault. So this assembly, these parts are all the same version as the one in the vault. That lets me keep track of what version I'm looking at, and also if someone else changes a part, that they have access to that I'm referencing, when they check in the changes, I can see the indicator here that there's been a change. But just to kind of go through it real quick, our scenario here is that this thing is pretty much done, but we determine we need to have more strength in the front end and the arms themselves. So one thing I might do as a SOLIDWORKS user is I might decide I want to just open this up in its own windows for convenience. Again, all the typical constructs that you have with SOLIDWORKS you can do here. So I can go ahead and click on this and open it up in its own window like that, like I normally would do. And what SOLIDWORKS will do is it's going to say it's going to make changes to this read-only document. Why is it read-only? Well, it's read-only because I haven't checked it out yet. So, I've only checked out the top level assembly. All the other sub-assembly parts aren't checked out yet. I can see it's read-only here. If I want to check it out, all I have to do is come over here and say, yeah, I'm going to check it out. So I'm planning on making changes, check this out to me, and now that's it. I just simply now have the ability to save the changes to the vault for this file's companion up there. So let's go ahead and make a change. So let's make it thicker. I'll take this web and I'll make it 40 millimeters. So that'll make it much thicker. I could do some other changes I want. Whenever I decide that I want to bump up the version, save a, put a line in the sand here and say this is a version that I want to save, I just go ahead and just say, okay, check in these changes at this point. And it's going to bump up the version number. So it's going to go from 2 to 3. And I'll say, what did I do here? I'll comment that I thickened the web. Regardless of whether I put a comment in here, the user, the version of the file, time and date stamp, all that will be kept in the file's history as we go forward. And I should also mention that versions are not revisions. Okay, so versions are just 1, 2, 3, 4, just a serial number, from 1 to X of all the changes that occur in a given document inside a PDM. It's just a system that keeps track of that. It's great for the work in progress stage where I have versions. I want to go back to what I did, this morning or yesterday. I can do that. But revisions are typically, reserved for things like a release process. Or if you do an ACO and you're going to do another revision, so ABC or however you want to number and letter those things, that revision field is typically untouched until you get to a certain place in the workflow where the part or assembly or drawing or whatever is quote unquote released. So version not the same as revision. Versions are just like as I work, I have this nice little breadcrumb trail. I can go back to any version I want to and then save it as the newest version. And that way I can very easily go back in time and fork my designs as I'm doing them inside the typical WIP scenario. So, okay, so we made that change there. I can also, by the way, go back to any version I want to as well. So inside of SOLIDWORKS, the way I would do that is to say get version, I can go back to version 1. We want to see what that first version looked like. And I can do that. We can also do this in Professional with Word documents and any other document that's inside there. But inside of SOLIDWORKS is how you do it. And you can see here that it's warning me in the status field that, hey, I'm looking at version 1 of 3. It gives you this little red, counterclockwise clock saying, hey, you're looking at something that's older than the latest version of Vault. And I've also customized my interface to put a red line in that field. Again, this is really helpful when you're working at assembly. Someone checks out one of the parts that you don't have checked out, makes some changes to it collaboratively, and then checks those changes in. Within 1 or 2 seconds of that happening, that line will change from the equal sign gray out to this kind of scenario right here. And I can see it. I can say, oh, well, that doesn't matter to me. That's somewhere way else, elsewhere in the device that I'm working on. I don't care. Or I can go ahead and right-click and say, yeah, go ahead and get latest version right now, and it'll do that for me. So with PDM, one of the great things about it is that you have this history, this ability to built in, go back in time without having to save -1, -2, -3, -4 versions of your files, of physical files, and then trying to keep track of all that stuff. It automatically does this for you. And it does it not only with parts, but also with sub-assemblies and drawings and assemblies as well. So as I go forward here, I know that the assembly knows what version of the parts were in there, and the drawings know that as well as I go along. So I just make my changes and let SOLIDWORKS PDM handle all the details of keeping the version history for me. The other thing I want to do here is I want to replace this part. So I'm going to get rid of it. I'll just delete it. And I need to make or get a new one that's made of a better material that's more suitable to what we're doing here. So this is where the design reuse really comes into play. If I want to reuse a file, the first thing I have to do is be able to find it. As I mentioned before, many times people just, they'll look for, a couple minutes and then they're like, you know what, forget it, I'll just make a new one. And that can cause all kinds of, headaches, and not only just wasted time, if you have an efficient way to find everything that ever existed in your data, folders, which we do have inside of PDM. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I want to do a search. I can do a couple different kinds of searches. The built-in kind of complete search is the Swiss Army knife of all the searches. It kind of comes with it. And you'd have all, access to all your custom properties. And I can go ahead and look for things at a certain point in the workflow, which we'll talk about. So I just find release parts, for example. I can go ahead and use our data cards. So our data cards, as you'll see later on, they're a way for people outside of SOLIDWORKS to look at custom property information. Essentially, that's what it is in the database. And the data card is a presentation of that in a sort of a gold card catalog format. Different data cards for different kinds of files, because what you may keep track of in terms of metadata or properties of an Excel spreadsheet will probably be different than what you do for a SOLIDWORKS part. And then I just come in here and fill out what I know. So I know that I'm looking for a pin. Put the word pin in the description field, hit enter, and then it goes ahead and finds them all. So whether it's 550 or 500 hits, it's going to go ahead and do that immediately, because SQL, using full-blown SQL with PDM Professional, we're not even scratching the surface of its awesome search capabilities. I mean, it's used by banks and huge data houses. So yeah, what we're doing with it is quite not really stressing it. So I can go find these files that I want to that way. And again, you can use this if you want to and save this as a favorite setup. Okay, if you want to, but there's other things you can do with searches too, such as make your own forms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my quick search. This is a search form that I made myself, and when the internet got a nice little icon there to make it look cool. And basically what I have here is the 5 fields that I search for almost all the time. This is all I really need. So for what I do, so like look for pin description, same kind of deal. It's going to be a search. And then I'm also going to narrow it down by material. I'm going to say 4340, and I do find a pin that is made of that hardened steel that I want. So okay, let's take a look and find out more about this. So I click on the item in the list, it'll now show me the data card presenting the information about that part. So here's a part number. I can see it's been released here. It's in revision 8, so it's been the initial release. It's never gone through an ECO. And I can see some other things about it, the material, the weight, keep track of costs. Anything you want to keep track of inside of here in the database, you can do that. Now, the other cool thing is this reflects your existing custom properties. So if you have your custom properties and your parts and assemblies already being used to do things like, map to title blocks in your drawing sheets or your bill of materials, filling out the information there. When you check in your files initially, they will map to your fields in the database and vice versa. So this is all one mechanism here. You don't have to redo your drawing templates, and it also means that as soon as you check in your existing data in the PDM, you immediately have searchability to all the fields that you've been using over the years for just title block information, which is a really great thing. We also have the ability to see where something is used. So I can say, well, is this used anywhere right now? I say, no, it's not. If it was used here, it would show me that in assemblies and as well as drawings, as well as derived components or mirror components. It would do that here. I can also look at a preview and see what it looks like. Now, this is the thumbnail kind of graphic that SOLIDWORKS keeps inside the file itself. If I click in here, after a moment or two, you'll see that we also have built into PDM Professional, we have eDrawings Professional built in to the client as well. So I can spin the part around. I can measure it to see what the diameter is, if it's going to fit. Of course, I could also keep track of diameter and length and things as data fields in my database, and I can search on those. But in this case here, I'm not doing that, so I'm just going to go ahead and just measure it and find out that, yes, it is the right size, magically enough. So let's go ahead now and with this window over. It's just a regular Windows window, so I can just drag and drop the part in here. If it's got 8 references, you can deal with that too. And now that I've done that over there, all I have to do on the CAD side here is just edit my mirror component assembly feature and add the new part to the mirror list there. So we got both of those. So that's what it's like to just make changes and things to parts and assemblies. When you make a change to an assembly or your part, typically you want to also then open the drawing, right? So you open the drawing up so that just to make sure everything looks good. Maybe there's some new dimensions you want to add in or what have you. I can do that quite simply by doing the standard sort of open drawing thing from here, or I could find it in the database. But I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go to the regular open command in SOLIDWORKS. Now you may or may not know that the open command, the open command and the save command in almost all, I can't say all, but darn near all of the Windows applications out there, they all use, or almost all of them use, the common object dialog for open and save. In other words, they use the dialog box construction that is part and built into Windows itself. And then what they do is, they add in their own controls like we do in SOLIDWORKS, and Adobe does that as well. Add some other buttons and things like that. But the basis of this is the standard dialog that is generated and provided by the operating system itself. That's important because what we've done with SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional is we've incorporated that into the open and save commands in just basic Windows. So if I go to a folder that's actually a mount point for my vault in the regular open command in Windows, now I have vault information available to me. I can see all these folders here, and I can go ahead and see all the other data information in here, and I can also look at the tabs for files as well, and I can even do searches right through here. So what this means is when you have any kind of client of PDM Professional, whether it's for the CAD user, whether it's for the contributor, which is a regular Windows user, or just a Windows-based viewer only, whenever they go into like Adobe Illustrator or a CAM program or something like that, they don't need to have a direct integration. You have basically this base level integration with pretty much any Windows application on your machine, as long as it uses that dialog, which, again, I can't think of any that don't, but I'm sure there are maybe 1 or 2 out there in the millions of Windows apps that exist in the world today. So I'll go to open, I find this, I can look at it, the data card, and I can go say, okay, let's go ahead and open that guy up. Now I'm opening up a drawing. SOLIDWORKS PDM comes in and says, well, it's in the vault. Do you want to just open it and look at it, or do you want to check it out? Yeah, thanks. I do want to check it out because I'm going to make changes. And the system's actually going to make the changes mostly. It's going to update the graphics. It's going to update the bill of materials lists. Okay, I might do some cleanup, moving some things around, adding dimensions. In this case here, I deleted that pin out there, and it was part of an explode that I'm not going to edit in front of you right now. So just to quickly deal with this, I'll take this balloon and point it to the new part, and maybe I'll take this balloon over here, make sure it's not lonely, and do all the things you do to kind of make your drawing, look nice after updates and things, and then I'm done. So what would I do? I'm going to go ahead and check on my changes to this drawing. So it gives a new version of the drawing. Now again, SOLIDWORKS PDM, the database knows all the links all the time. So if I want to check in this drawing, it's going to say, hey, this drawing is referencing an assembly that has been changed since its last check-in. You probably want to check that in, and automatically does that for me. I could clear that if I want to. But again, 99% of the time, I'm just saying yes to this thing. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. That's what I want to do. And then with my comment documenting my change, well, I swapped out tip pin and updated drawing, like so. And we check that in, it's going to bump up the version of both the assembly and the drawing of the assembly at the same time. So as a SOLIDWORKS user, PDM Professional doesn't really represent a whole lot of extra hoops I got to jump through. In fact, it's very simple. It's the concept of open read-only versus checking out to get the right program. It's only really difference there. And then I get all these benefits by basically just using PDM, using SOLIDWORKS as I normally would, to have a version history to go back to have everything documented, to know that when I have something checked out that no one else is going to go over later on after I save and over my changes. It's all managed by SOLIDWORKS PDM Pro. So as a SOLIDWORKS user, it's really nothing but upside. And I got to tell you that we put this in hundreds of companies, and in people that have been trepidatious, when I first show it to them, afterwards and they come in, to a user group meeting or something like that, and I ask them about it, they're always like, well, it's the best thing you ever did. I don't know why I was afraid of it. There's really nothing to be afraid of. It's actually pretty much, like I said, nothing but upside for the SOLIDWORKS user, and very, very minimal change to what you're doing already and every day in SOLIDWORKS. So what if I'm done with this now? So we can just do check-in, check-out, version control, and get the searchability benefits. That's kind of base level PDM. But we also have the ability to do workflows, to actually automate processes as well inside of PDM Professional. So when you're at your company and you're done with a project and you're okay, I've done this thing, and now I need to tell somebody about it. Typically, you might do an email, you might talk about it at a meeting, you might have maybe some companies that still do this, that print out all the drawings and put them in a manila folder and put it on someone's desk. Whatever you do, we can automate that for you and keep everything electronic, keep everything very efficient and error-free. And how do we do that? Well, we have workflows. So in this case here, I'm Mark, I'm a fictitious engineer in my fictitious company, and I'm going to be done with this. So I'm going to go ahead and move this on. So I go up here and say I want to submit for approval. Now, why do I only have one option at this stage of the game, and why is it called submit for approval, and what does that all do? That is, again, how the workflow is set up. So let's go to the workflow and look at it right here inside the PDM admin tool. This is the administrator tool that your PDM admin will learn in 3 days of training at GSC. Let's go ahead and put this and log into it. So this is where you set up PDM. And again, we help you as part of our team at GSC. We have a dedicated team of experts led by a highly experienced individual that will come in and look at your situation and give you a statement of work, and you'll know exactly what's going to happen. And we help you as part of this process with setting up things like these data cards. So if I look at my data card here, the editor is pretty straightforward. It's just like what you're used to with VBA or things like that, controls, data sources, etc. If you go down here and look at groups, I have 4 groups of users. So docs, documentation people, engineers, managers, and viewers. These are groups of users, just making it easy for me to kind of mass assign some overall permissions in the project, in my folder structure, I should say, my vault. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. So here's some users here as well. They belong to different kinds of groups. By the way, you can create these users and groups right inside of PDM itself. In PDM Professional, we can actually use Active Directory to generate these accounts and these users inside of PDM administration tool, or we can actually use Active Directory to authenticate users into the vault so they don't even have to type in a login into the vault when they go there. It's just when they get into Windows and log in, they're automatically logged into the vault as well. Up to you. So down here we have all the workflows. And I only have one in this case. It's a pretty simple sort of basic, this is a proc design sort of scenario, right? So we start out work in progress, and then things go to waiting for approval state. They're sitting on someone's desk to be approved, and then they are released. These are all states that files can be in. So files have states, regardless of where they are located folder-wise, and then you get from one state to another through these arrows called transitions. So let's go ahead and look at the work in progress state. It is the initial state, so when someone creates a new file and puts it in the vault, it's going to be in the work in progress state. Call it work in progress because that's where I named it up here. People in the documentation group have some permissions. People and engineers and managers have pretty much carte blanche in terms of the permissions, which again are robust and very granular. And you also notice here that there's no one from the viewer group. The viewer group itself doesn't even see these files at all. So that when files are working in progress, the viewers don't even know those files exist if that's when they're at state. Now, as Mark the engineer, I had one way to get this out of work in progress, and that's to submit for approval. That's a transition that I can do along with other people that are able to make files in work in progress. And what I'm doing there is I can do actions if I want to in any transition. So typically, more actions happen later on in the past approval state, or your equivalent to that. But up front here, I'm going to actually do an action where I'm going to execute a task, pulling up SOLIDWORKS Design Checker dialog and saying, hey, do you want to run your drawings through Design Checker? I'm also going to do some notifications here, so as things go through a transition, you can have automatic notifications to groups of people, individuals, whatever you want, that they'll know that these files, these things are coming and you need to act upon them or do something or just know about them, however you want to set it up. So I'm going to notify the managers that, hey, these files are going to be waiting for approval and you need to get on them. There's another thing I can do to get from out of work in progress, and that's this fast track approve that goes right from work in progress to release. And I created that in my workflow specifically for managers. My thought was if I'm a manager and I'm doing some SOLIDWORKS work and I'm going to say I approve it myself, well, it's a self-approval. I don't need to submit an approval request myself and then go ahead and approve it. I can just say go right to the release state immediately. Now, most people are going to go through this process and waiting for approval happens. And what I have here in waiting for approval is, again, a lot fewer permissions for people. People can't just check files out at this stage. You need to look at it or whatever. And then they're going to wait here until somebody moves them out. Now, you can pass them. Only managers can do that. When managers pass approval, a bunch of things happen. A bunch of variables are set. Revisions are increased, so basically incremented from blank to A in my case, because I'm just using letters. You can do pretty complicated numbers if you want, or letters. And you can do a whole bunch of different actions too. I mean, when we're doing this, the workflow gives you these points of automation possibility, and built right into PDM Professional. I can show you some of the actions we can do. So we can do a send a mail. We can set variables. Basically, the setting of variables like basically setting a custom property and value. Okay. We can import or export data right from here in the XML format. So I'd export data in XML typically, so it can go into ERP, and the item masters can be created inside there, ready to go for the manufacturing engineer to start, filling in the manufacturing side information right in the ERP system. But at least all the part numbers and everything else are automatically populated, so you're not going to transpose that stuff. We can also execute SOLIDWORKS tasks, so things that SOLIDWORKS would do. So like print files, or pull up Design Checker, or convert files. Save all the drawings out as DXF or PDF and put them in this folder on this server somewhere, maybe even outside the vault if you want to. Things like that can happen. But we also have a catch-all. So if none of those things are what you exactly want for the automation, we can execute any Windows command you like. So it can be a custom program, that honks a horn or rings a bell, or whatever you want to do. You just put that in here in the arguments and then go ahead. So PDM gives you the construct, the ability to not only have these different workflow and approval processes, but also automate things to happen automatically as things go through the process. And again, many of them are built-in common things. And then, in case you have some custom programs, you can also do that in the hooks right in there for you to just call that out and do what you want to do. So we're really automating a lot of things. And again, you can automate as much as those you want. Most companies start out, kind of small, and then they just kind of grow it, and then automate another process. And that's just, this is a perfectly natural way to implement PDM Professional. And lastly here, I'm going to notify documentation people passing approval that, hey, they're going to need to get their stuff together and get that documentation finalized and published. And then when things are in a release state, so they finally hop into here, now, again, documentation people can do very little, they can view them and do some minor things, but the thing I want to call your attention to is the viewers, for the first time, are invited to the party. So when files were in a work in progress state or waiting for approval state, the people in this viewer group didn't even know those files existed. Now, once they're released, yes, they can see them, and they can only see them. All they can do is read the file content. So this is a built-in sort of way to have it so that a certain group of people can only see the latest version of documents. Now, of course, you can also make it so that it's not just state-based. It's also, well, certain people can only see release documents in a certain project folder, structure, or whatever. You can make it location-specific too. But typically what people do is they leave things in the project folders that they want them to do, and then issue the states to regulate what people can do with the files in that state based on their login and their permissions. So you're not moving files from folder to folder. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's just a much better way to handle that. And once things are in a release state, then again, they sit there, and then unless someone requests a change, and it goes through a change, you submit for approval, and you go back and either go back to edit it, or you go back and approve it, and it goes to a release state again with and then along the way, when the change is approved, we're going to, as part of one of the actions, increment the revision again. So it'll go from A to B or whatever. So this is a sort of typical workflow. Won't probably reflect exactly what you guys, your companies do exactly. Again, you can get really complicated with this, all kinds of things. I just want to kind of expose you to what PDM Professional workflows look like. So I come in the next morning. Do I have to launch SOLIDWORKS just to open up my project and submit for approval? No, I can come in just plain old Windows. This is Windows 10, the File Explorer on Windows 10. And you can see it's a regular desktop and all other stuff. And if I come up to this Hamatro folder here, this is my Vault folders. So I log in that way. And I can go ahead and right to where I want to go inside here and find that assembly drawing and say, yeah, now at this point, I am going to submit for approval right here. So when I do that, you'll see that, again, it knows all the reference items that have never been approved before. Many of them have been. I'm using many release documents, so those references. Okay, I couldn't check them if I want or submit for approval if I wanted to. But what I can do is I can say, well, like for example, this SOLIDWORKS Composer file that's part of this whole project. That is, yes, it's part of the project, but I haven't touched it yet, so I'm going to hold that back. Again, you have control over what you want to submit, and you make your comments for the history. So okay, exceeds. Okay, and please approve. And remember, my vacation starts Thursday. So that's going to be put in the system, and then again, now it's going through transition. So that transition, that submit for approval transition, and it happens behind the scenes automatically, like notifications being sent out. In this case, also the task schedule, the task SOLIDWORKS task of, hey, do you want to run a design checker through this? It pops up. I can be asked, but since I know I'm a super awesome engineer, my stuff is perfect. My drawings are flawless, so I'll skip that myself. But now you see that now these files have gone to a different state. So that means my ability as Mark the engineer to act on them, my permissions have changed based on the workflow that was defined. So as Mark the engineer, I'm kind of done. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to log out as Mark. I'll pretend to be somebody else now. So no longer am I Mark the engineer, and I'm going to log in as Neil. Neil is one of one of our managers. So I log into there, and then I get a notification. So the notification, and again, I wish I could just hide that. There we go. The notification I have is a message automatically generated through the workflow that, hey, you have some files to look at. So again, that's part of the workflow. And what's cool about this, it gives me the information, what's going on, going from where to where, by what person at what time and date, okay? And then it builds up this nice list of not just the files that are involved, but hyperlinks to functions that you normally would do if you're going to do some kind of a review like this. So yeah, in the regular interface, in regular Windows interface, I go into and find this drawing and find its properties, but here I have it right here. So let me see the drawing properties. I want to see the data card on that guy. Go ahead and do that right there, directly for that file. If I would say view, it would bring it up in the eDrawings viewer. If I go down to like the ARM and I want to look at the history of it, I can do that right now. Again, the regular interface, I can go ahead and do this, but this is a nice bundle of, here's a nice concise list of the files that are involved in this situation that you need to look at, and here's a nice hyperlinks to direct functions to those files you normally would do, like so. Now this is a message that was generated by PDM, and I'm looking at it through the PDM internal messaging system, okay? Most customers don't use the internal messaging system for PDM. What they do is they use their SMTP, which you can go out to any SMTP server, the messaging that way. So usually this ends up being in their Outlook inbox. Contents are exactly the same. Just the wrapper is different. My Pro Laptop has every software you can think of out there, loaded, including its own SQL server. And the last thing I want to do for this Pro Laptop is install and maintain an Exchange server. So that's why I'm using the internal messaging system that's built into SolidWorks PDM. But again, you typically will see this as an email. So what happens if I'm just looking at this, but I'm not going to act on it right now because I got a conference call in 5 minutes. What I could do is I could, if I'm in Outlook, put one of those little red flags on it or something like that. Somehow to kind of remind myself. But again, if you're a typical person, you walk into the office, log in your email, you get this email along with 35 other emails like donuts in the break room and stuff like that. So you got to kind of wade through it after your conference call. Well, I want to call your attention to the fact that everything inside of SolidWorks PDM is searchable. Everything. So if I go into the regular interface here, regular Windows, and I start looking inside here, I can go and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to do a quick search. In this case, I don't care about the name, description, or material. I care about where they are in the workflow. Show me all the files that are waiting for approval, and I could narrow it down by a certain person. In this case, I don't care, but I could narrow it down just to Mark, and then boom, there it is. So all the files that are waiting for approval are listed right now. So all the things you do inside of PDM that are kept track of in the history are searchable, whether it's something you type into a property field, or whether it's something that the system generates, like it knows what the state is going to be, or it knows the date. So I can go and say, show me all the files that are older than 30 days in a state of work in progress in these folders. You can build up all these different queries, and you can really dig into your data, and you can really do a lot of really awesome things with it. So you really kind of own your data, can see everything in a way you could not ever do before with just plain old Windows. Now in this case here, I have all these files. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll go ahead and pass them. So looks great. And then whatever I want to do in terms of stating inside the messaging system, and there it is. So now these files will change. There you go. You go back in here, you can see that these are now released. So now, things have automatically been updated. notification happened to documentation people. My ability to check them out is gone because I can't do that anymore in the release documents. I could do an ECO request if I needed to or something like that to be able to edit them, again, based on the workflow. And then also the people in the viewers group for the first time can see these files and just look, in that case, find and view and print. That's it. So again, as we're looking at this different interface with PDM, it is basically Windows Explorer. So I have the CAD editor interface, which is inside of the CAD tool like SolidWorks or inside of DraftSight or AutoCAD or whatever. Then this is for people who either have the CAD editor and are inside of Windows, or you can get this separately, just for people that are going to be doing all the things you normally would do inside of PDM in terms of checking in documents and approving things and stuff like that, but not inside CAD. So everything else, so your Word documents and Illustrator and whatever else, and managers and that. So this Windows interface is actually really nice because people kind of know how to get into it already. And as we look at this, I want to kind of explore a little bit more of the information we can see inside of our PDM Windows interface. So say, for example, I want to look at this rod end part. So this rod end, you can see it's a part we just created. We submitted it today, actually. And let's take a look at its where used. So if I look at where this rod end is used, I can see that this rod end part is used in the assembly. It's used in the drawing of the assembly, and it's used in its drawing of its own. So the rod end part here is the corresponding drawing to that. And I can see the versions of that and right here. I can also let's drill up to the overall assembly. And where is the assembly used? Well, the assembly is used inside of a Word document. It's used with the drawing, and it's also used with the Composer document. So the Composer document has a hierarchy to this, and you can create these relationships yourself. So the natural relationship that is automatically created is this assembly and this drawing, but you can also copy and paste references between other documents so they travel along, like I've done here. So I pasted this Word document as a reference object to this Composer file, and I've copied this object as a reference to the assembly, so it travels with it. So I've established that myself in this case. Contains all these items here. Okay, you can see the contains, but there's also the bill of material tab, which is actually the BOM as it would be inside of SolidWorks, but without having to be inside of SolidWorks. So as a non-SolidWorks user, I can actually look at this BOM, and I can look at all the data information I want. Again, these columns can be whatever you like. I can hover over these things and get a thumbnail so I can kind of see what they look like. I can drill down into subassemblies if I want to. And I also have the ability to, again, go back in time. So this is the latest version, revision A, of this assembly, the release version. If I want to go back and see what version 2 looked like, I can do that right now, and then boom, there I'm looking at it. So I see what versions of which parts and assemblies were used in that version of the BOM of this version of the assembly. So not only can I do that individually, but I can also compare to. So I'll go back up to the release version, and I'll say I want to compare that BOM with an older version like version 2. And now I have immediate direct feedback showing me what's different. So everything where there's a green is new, everything that's yellow is modified, and everything that's red is deleted. So I can see here that in this ARM part, which was already there, we started just making changes to it in this session. What changed in it was, well, it used to be a blank revision field, and now it's A, and then the version was starting at 2, and now it went all the way up to 4. All right. In terms of this hardened tip pin, all these fields are new because basically I add that part in, between version 2 and the latest version here. And likewise, you have a couple more updates of versions and revisions here. And then down here, we have all this in red because I physically deleted this part completely from the assembly between version 2 and the released version. So you can do this immediately and compare BOMs anytime you like, which is extremely helpful if you make products or machines, especially things like that, where you ship them like 5 years ago, and then someone needs some replacement parts. You're thinking, okay, we got some standard stock parts we're going to use, but not entirely sure that they're going to work in that. So you can actually see which version that is, and beyond that, if I go back to version 2 of this assembly, I can say, well, let's go back to version 2 of that assembly, the one we shipped 5 years ago, and I want to see it as built, which is going to tell me what we actually shipped at the time in terms of version of the parts and things. I want you to stick in the latest version of all the reference documents, all the reference parts, and then I can go ahead and open up in SOLIDWORKS and see, okay, that new bracket, that latest version of the bracket, is that going to work in that version of that assembly? I can look at it and say, oh yeah, we just added a hole, no big deal, or I can say, oh yeah, we added a tab at a right angle for another application that's actually going to interfere with how we used it in this particular machine. So we have customers who spend several days to a week every time they need to do a repair kit to go through and manually try to figure out if the parts that they want to do in a repair kit are going to work with all the older versions of their custom automation machines. And when they got this, they were just like, okay, you can take an engineer's time, 3 to 5 person days of engineering time into 10 minutes, 15 minutes of, by the time you open it up and look and everything else, that's, ROI is obvious right there. So there's all kinds of different things you can do with this, because again, think of everything that you keep track of with all these documents and understand that once they're in the system, they are searchable. They can slice them and dice them and report on them in a number of different ways. So it's not just basic version, check in, check out, permission control. There's a lot more that's going on here in PDM Pro because we have the ability to look at this data in a number of ways. And I look at this overall here, I should also mention that in the preview window here, our preview window works with multiple file types. So because we're in PDM Professional, if I look at a Word document, click on it, and it'll show me that Word document right now. I can see this is a Word document with kind of a shell. It's got a bunch of placeholders where eventually pictures would come, probably out of Composer, in my case. So I can look at the contents of that. I can look at contents of Excel spreadsheets, PDFs. Any of those things can be managed right inside of PDM Professional, and you can version them, and you can have them go through processes and controls and workflows, just like any other SOLIDWORKS document. So that is an overview of what it's like to manage your SOLIDWORKS data inside of PDM, and a little bit of extra overview outside of the basically SOLIDWORKS user.